RPGs are amongst some of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch. But in order to be among the very best, I'm looking for a couple of things. First of all is an incredible story. To me, this is what RPGs are the best at. Giving you characters which you can fall in love with, and a story that is so incredible, it makes the game almost impossible to put down. And the other thing I love to do in RPGs is explore. I'm looking for a beautiful world that not only lets you go from place to place to do the story, but gives you a ton of other things to explore, secrets to find, and just really makes the world feel alive. So here are my favorite RPGs on the Nintendo Switch. But before we get into the list, I want you to go in the comments down below and list me your top 5, because after all, this is only my opinion and I'd love to see what yours is. First up on my list is a game that literally just came out days ago, and that's Octopath Traveller 2. I don't know what it is at the moment, but I've been really struggling in the last 2 months to find a game that just keeps my attention. Since Christmas, we've had a couple of releases, but I've really struggled to play them for more than like 2 hours at a time, and I end up just getting distracted and putting the game down. That was until Octopath Traveller 2 came along. It's genuinely been quite a while since I've been this excited to wake up in the morning and play a game. The graphics and the music of Octopath Traveller 2 are absolutely stunning. I literally cannot believe this is the graphics on the Nintendo Switch. It looks that good. And if you're wondering, you can play Octopath Traveller 2 without playing Octopath Traveller 1. And actually, I'd encourage you to play Octopath Traveller 2 before the first game, as I actually think it's better. If you're unaware of the Octopath games, then basically it's an RPG which follows 8 separate characters along their journeys. And to me, it's the storytelling of each of these individual characters that is the strength of this game. Now, this is by no means a review of the game, as I'm only 10 or so hours in, and I'm only on the first chapter of each of the characters. But so far, I have fallen in love with so many of the characters and their backstories. The game starts you off by letting you pick one of the 8 characters whose tale you're gonna follow first. And once selected, you go straight into their story. Not only are the cutscenes incredibly beautiful with the pixel art, the voice acting just makes the stories feel that much more special. And once you've finished the first chapter of your initial character, where you go is completely up to you. The way I kind of do it is I like to run around and do everyone's chapter 1s, collect all the characters before I even start on the first character's chapter 2. And you can kind of figure out where to go, as it basically gives you a difficulty level before you enter into an area. So the difficulty level is basically just what level your characters need to be at to successfully make it through. Now, it is worth noting there are no difficulty options when you start off the game, which is a little bit disappointing, but there is a way to make the game easier. It just involves a bit more grinding, and that's basically the same as Pokemon, where you'll make sure that you are a higher level than the recommended level, and that makes the boss fights a little bit easier. Which brings me on to the battling, which I really enjoy. As I said, it's a turn-based battle mechanic, but every single creature you fight has a weakness, and once you find that weakness, it will jot it down below the creature so you'll know for future battles. The easier creatures will have more weaknesses, while the harder ones will have fewer. And every time you hit them with a weapon they're weak to, the little counter goes down and you can break them when it gets to 0. Not only does this mean they miss their next turn, it also means you'll deal increased damage on that turn when you hit them. There's an added mechanic in this game called boost points. And you get 1 per turn unless you use your boost points in the previous turn. This adds another layer of strategy to the game, as using boost points either lets you hit the enemy more times, allowing you to break them, or it can also be used to give an incredibly powerful elemental damage. And although it sounds confusing, it's actually really intuitive and really easy once you get into it, and each of the characters you play as have their own unique battle styles and their own advantages and disadvantages that make it all the more fun. I do have a love-hate relationship with the boss battles though. They can be really difficult and really long, but they are so satisfying when you get them done. Now, as I said, I'm only about 10 hours into the game and I am obsessed, but I've heard from other reviews that compared to the first Octopath Traveller game, the ending of this one is a bit more satisfying and kind of sees the characters overlap a little bit more, which is definitely something that was missing from the previous Octopath game. Also, compared to that one, I feel like the stories of the characters are better, more fleshed out, and I care for them a lot more than I did for the first game. Just from the chapter 1 stories alone, there have been so many beautiful and special moments, and I'm so excited to see how the rest of all of their stories go. I've been spending every waking moment that I'm not creating content playing it, and I cannot wait to get to the end. I definitely recommend this if you're new to RPGs or want to just stick your toe in, as the tutorial system makes it really easy to get into. I just wish we had difficulty settings so that you could enjoy the story without really long boss battles. Hopefully that's something they bring in the future. Next, we have Harvestella, and I genuinely believe this might be one of the most underrated games on the Nintendo Switch. This is a farming sim mixed with an RPG, and I genuinely think it's an absolutely fantastic mix. In RPGs, one of the biggest things I miss is the fact that you don't really have a house. Yes, you go off and you do a story, but you're not really like an actual person in so many of them. But this one being mixed with a farming sim kind of solves that problem. See, you have a house that you return to every single evening, and that's where you travel from every single day to go continue the story. And throughout the story, you can upgrade your house to make it bigger and better, and also have the farm to tend to every single day. I really like the way they introduce farming into the game. It basically serves as not only the main way you get money to upgrade all of your weapons, but also the way you kind of replenish your health. You can take all of the ingredients you farm and then make them into food and use that food during battles for your stamina and HP. Now, the story of the game and the RPG elements are also fantastic. And I genuinely think if this game had voice acting and fleshed out cutscenes, it would be in my top 5 games of all time. That's how much I enjoyed the story aspects. You find yourself in this strange town with no memories of your past whatsoever. And it's not long before you discover that not only is this town, but the whole world in danger. See, this world has something called the Season of Death, or as they call it, Quietus. And during this season, no one can go outside and no crops can be grown whatsoever. But the real issue is the Season of Death is getting more frequent and longer every single time it happens. So it's up to you to travel this whole land and uncover what on earth is going on. Not only do you have this main story to do, like all good RPGs, you also have a plethora of side quests. This is split into 2 sections. You kind of have the normal side quests by random villagers, but you also have the character side quests to do. And I really like the character ones as they flesh out your companions so much, and you get to learn so much about them. But what surprised me the most was even the random little side quests that you can do in each and every town were also so fleshed out and had such meaningful stories. It was something I really wasn't expecting from a farming sim mixed RPG game. Now, this game is underrated, I think, for one big reason, and that's because the first 10 hours of the game are so slow. It's got the usual slow elements of the start of an RPG mixed in with the slow elements of the start of a farming sim, overall making it an incredibly slow starting game. But I assure you, once you get past those initial 10 or so hours, the game really does get fantastic. I will just quickly point out, I'm not entirely sure this game is worth full price, although it is a solid like 70-hour RPG. But if you can get it on sale, it is so worthwhile. Another franchise on the Switch, which I think is great for new RPG players, is Fire Emblem. Now, I'm kind of lumping together Fire Emblem Engage and Fire Emblem Three Houses, as they're both great but for different reasons. Fire Emblem Engage is really good for those of you who just want to enjoy the battling and enjoy the story and not have to do much stuff in between. Also, compared to Fire Emblem Three Houses, the graphics have seen a massive improvement and the battle system just feels more succinct. If you're unfamiliar with Fire Emblem, then it is a tactical RPG, meaning unlike Octopath Traveller, where you just attack each move, you're also in charge of moving all the units and attacking per turn. Now, Fire Emblem Three Houses has a lot more going on in between each battle. If you're someone who wants to get more involved with each of the characters and more involved in the story side and less about the battling, then I'd say go that way. Three Houses sees you as a school teacher in a school. And the big difference between the story in Fire Emblem Three Houses versus Fire Emblem Engage is that your decisions actually matter. I believe Fire Emblem Engage only has one ending. There are no choices throughout the story that will impact which ending you get. You basically just hop from battle to cutscene and carry on like that until the game ends. In Three Houses though, there are a number of different decisions that will affect which ending to the game you get. And to me, that's what made it fantastic. I didn't feel like a bystander in each of the cutscenes. I felt like I was actually there and that I really needed to pay attention. So come the time where I have to make a choice, I made the right one. A good example of this is just right at the beginning of the game. You get asked which of the three houses you wish to teach. And that decision basically decides which characters you'll be fighting with and joining you on your adventure for the entire game. I personally also felt like I knew the characters better in Fire Emblem Three Houses than Engage. Fire Emblem Engage gave me so many characters that I just couldn't use, so I ended up just picking my favorites and getting to know them. Whereas in Fire Emblem Three Houses, I felt more responsible for each of them as I was their teacher. So I got to know each and every student outside of the battlefield a lot more. The only thing I do really love about Fire Emblem Engage compared to Fire Emblem Three Houses is that the focus is more on you in Engage, or shall I say the main character, as the game kind of focuses on you being a flawed hero. And I really do like that. I love when they portray characters to not be perfect, as it just makes them feel more real and like they're alive, which is something I do really enjoy. Also, Fire Emblem Engage has this beautiful chonky cat, and you can dress him up. You can also dress yourself up in some absolutely wacky outfits, and I did enjoy that. They gave us some good choice. Either way, I don't think you could go too wrong with either of them. If you're just looking for a bit more to do outside the battles, then Fire Emblem Three Houses is the one for you, as there's just so much interacting to be done with all the students, between each other and yourself, that it's fantastic. But either way, I think you're going to love them. Then we have Breath of the Wild. Do I even need to say more? If I were to forget all about one game and re-experience it for the first time on the Switch, it would be Breath of the Wild. I loved the game to pieces. Again, I wish there was a slightly easier mode, especially as the very beginning of the game really throws you into the deep end. But as you progress a little bit more and you get things like the Master Sword, the game feels easier and becomes more about exploring than it does fighting. My only wish with Breath of the Wild is that we had more cutscenes. I loved each and every portion of the story they gave us. And I just wanted to get to know the characters more and see more of them. That's one thing I really hope with Tears of the Kingdom that they give us more of, is cutscenes and story. But the thing that made me fall in love with Breath of the Wild compared to all the other Zelda games is how they made their characters. For the first time, I saw Zelda as a flawed princess, as someone who had the weight of an entire kingdom on her shoulders, and she felt it. And by doing that, I saw Zelda not as this deity, but as this person just trying to do their best. And that made me care for her so much more than when she was a perfect princess. And somehow you get to know so much about Link as well. He doesn't say a single word, but the cutscenes still manage to portray his emotion as well, which I love. Exploring in Breath of the Wild was also one of my favorite things, not only to find the memories, but also to find Koroks and just all the secrets the land has to offer. There's dragons, there's temples, there's so many things that you wouldn't know were in the game unless you looked for them, and that's one of my favorite things. I do hope Tears of the Kingdom has just as big a focus on exploring. I cannot wait for it to come out, and I really hope this is another Game of the Year contender. Next, we have Dragon Quest Treasures. Now, everything I said at the beginning of the video, crumple it up, put it in a ball, put it at the back of your mind, and temporarily forget about it. Because I love Dragon Quest Treasures for a completely different reason to every other RPG on this list. Now, there is a bit of a story. You basically play as a brother and sister who really want to become treasure hunters. And throughout their journey, they're basically trying to connect the train stations of the entire land to link them all back up again. But despite what I thought when I initially bought the game, the story isn't really the focus. And that's why I ended up loving it so much. Now, I often say the one thing that I dislike about reviews of games is that they assume that every single game you play, you're gonna want to put your undivided attention on. But let's be honest, half the time I play the Switch, I'm playing when I have a TV show on or a movie on, and I don't necessarily always want to be sat in 20-minute plus cutscenes while I'm trying to also watch TV. I want something that's chill, that I can easily play whilst also enjoying doing something else. And that's where Dragon Quest Treasures comes in. The main part of this game sees you with your little monsters run out and just find treasure. There's a little compass that will point you in the direction of the closest treasure. You find that and your monsters will give you a hint as to where the treasure's located. And once you find it, you dig it up, you put it in your bag, and you go off and find more. Once your bag's full, you come back to your base and you basically get it appraised. Now, each piece of treasure not only has a rarity, but also has a condition associated with it. Meaning that if you get a duplicate, it's not always a waste, as it might actually be a better quality than the item you already have in your vault. Now, although this sounds pretty simple, it's such a fun gameplay loop, and I found myself literally doing it for hours, having a great time. It's basically become my go-to when I'm stressed, because I don't have to think that hard. There is combat involved, but 99% of the time, I don't even have to do the combat. My monsters will just be off fighting by themselves, and I can run around and explore and find the treasure while they do it. You can also send your monsters on expeditions to get you stuff as well, and you have your entire base to kind of build up bit by bit. Overall, it's just a really fun, almost mindless type of game, and there's definitely a time in my life where I need that. Next is a kind of similar idea to Dragon Quest Treasures, and that's Pokemon Legends Arceus. Now, it's not to say the story of the game is bad, it's just delivered really, really dry, but the story is not the reasons why I enjoyed Arceus. To me, Arceus was perfect for shiny hunting. And I was actually 50-50 as to whether I was going to include Arceus or the Let's Go games, but I feel like Arceus is better value for money. I think to me, Pokemon Legends Arceus is probably the #1 game I would recommend to new Pokemon players. Not only do you get to see the Pokemon in the overworld, it's a really accessible way to shiny hunt, and I've had so much fun doing that. Now, I know you can make shiny hunting easier and feel a bit more like Arceus in Scarlet and Violet when you get the shiny sandwiches, but for me, what makes Arceus so much more fun than I was having in Scarlet and Violet is the catching mechanic. I love doing mass outbreaks in Pokemon Legends Arceus and just yeeting Pokeballs at them. For me, it was so much more fun and so much more entertaining than doing the classic battle mechanic. As in every Pokemon game I play, the thing I like the least are the Pokemon battles. Now, Scarlet and Violet did make things slightly better with the fact that you didn't have to battle every trainer that you saw, but I really miss the catching mechanics in Arceus. And even though it's easier to encounter shinies in Arceus, I never felt like that devalued them for me, and if anything, it made me play the game longer, because I knew that if I sat down for 2-3 hours, I was guaranteed a shiny. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, it took me so long to find my first one. And I fully believe that if Pokemon Legends Arceus had cutscenes with voice acting, that it could have been a Game of the Year contender. It was that much fun. So if you're looking to pick up a Pokemon game, I do genuinely suggest Arceus. Speaking of Game of the Year contenders, we have Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, you can't really go wrong with any of the Xenoblade Chronicles games on the Nintendo Switch. And I know some people are going to say Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I love that game and I will forever talk about how good that game still is. But in my opinion, the third one's the best. I don't know why the Xenoblade games get so much hate when the story is literally so fantastic. I mean, the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 literally has 13 hours of cutscenes, but it doesn't feel like that whatsoever. It feels like it goes so fast. The world building, the character development is just breathtaking, and it's one of the only games that has made me cry when I've played it. And by crying, I mean sobbing very loudly for a very long time. I think the thing that made Xenoblade Chronicles 3 stand out to me so much more than 2 was that the characters were just flawed in a beautiful way. and you really get to see them develop as real people into adults as the game goes on. The game sees two groups of people from fighting colonies meet up, and throughout the story you kind of see them put their differences aside and realize that they're really not that different after all, and they start to question why they're even fighting in the first place. And this, coupled with the incredible voice acting, the beautiful cutscenes, just made it a game that I couldn't put down, and the 60 hours went so fast. The other great thing about this game is there are difficulty settings, so although the combat can be confusing at first, you can set it to the easy mode and just run around, explore, and enjoy the story for what it is, and not have to worry too much about learning this whole unique battle style. I do personally love it though, but I did watch a YouTube video just to make sure I knew what I was doing. But the boss battles felt so satisfying, mainly because you knew straight after it you were going to have a whole chunk of cutscenes that answered so many of your unanswered questions. And the best part of the Xenoblade Chronicle games is that you will never guess where the story's gonna go. I think I spent like 90% of the cutscenes with my jaw just open because I couldn't believe what was happening in front of me. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is probably my favorite game to have ever existed, or at least top 3. I love it so much, and I will forever say to people to just kind of try it. I know it's different. I know it's not my typical style of game, but it is my favorite game of all time because the story is just breathtaking. On a similar vein, that gives me Persona 5 Royale. I love it for all the same reasons I love Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Not only is the story so compelling, so interesting, and you can't put it down because you need to know what is going to happen next, the characters are flawed beautifully. You play as a Japanese schoolboy who was basically accused of a crime he didn't commit. And with a criminal record, he's sent to basically the only school that will accept him. There he finds other school kids who have similarly been screwed over by basically evil adults, and they gang together to try and rid the world of this evil. Again, it's another turn-based RPG with a really unique battle style that is a lot of fun. You basically try and change the hearts of these evil adults by going into their mind palace. And once you steal their greatest desires, they feel compelled to own up to their actions. The reason why I fell in love with this game so much is each time you successfully take down one of these adults, you get to see the effects on the characters and how their lives are changed for the better. So although these mind palaces can take literally hours to complete, it's so worth it because each of the characters are so positively affected by it that you feel that it's entirely worth it. Now, this is definitely not a kid's game. The topics are incredibly adult, and definitely go look up trigger warnings for them. But I think dealing with real topics and real struggles and people who are evil, not in the comic book sense, but in the real world sense, just makes the game feel that much better and makes the world feel alive. Now, when you're not battling, you get to live your normal schoolboy life. You'll attend classes and you'll have to answer questions that the teachers give you in those classes. I don't get a lot of them right. You also get to choose what you're going to do after school as well. Are you going to go to the shops? You can go to the movies, you can study, each of which also kind of develop different personality traits that will help you later on in the story. And whilst this is all happening, you often see yourself moving between the past and the present, meaning that there's kind of two stories that you're uncovering all at once. This was my first ever Persona game, and now I'm definitely going to need to check out all the rest because this became one of my favorite games so fast. It's different, it's fun, and I just can't put it down. It's also over 100 hours long just for the base game, not including trying to be a completionist, so you're definitely going to get your money's worth. And then we have No Man's Sky. Does this count as an RPG? I'm not too sure, but I'm going to count it anyway. Now, the reason I bring this up is we're entering another season of No Man's Sky, and I kind of wanted to mention something cool that happens on the Switch and every other console during this that doesn't really happen with Nintendo games. And that's Twitch drops. So if you guys don't know, I stream on Twitch, and Twitch often do these deals with games that basically means that if you watch a streamer playing that game, you can get exclusive items. Now, the cool thing is a lot of these items are really helpful, especially if you're in the early game, and I'm fairly sure you can get them on the Nintendo Switch. These can be anything from cool pets, cool ships, helpful things like weapons and attachments, and all you need to do to get them is watch someone stream it. Now, No Man's Sky has made this list because it is great value for money. I cannot stop playing it, and it is just so fun in a way other games aren't. Although there is a story to No Man's Sky, there's also indefinite exploration. It's a procedurally generated space, meaning you'll never find the end of it. You can find black holes, you can find different solar systems, you can find creatures that you've never seen before, befriend them and ride them. There's literally endless possibilities, and it's my go-to game if I have 10 minutes or 10 hours to spare, because I cannot put it down. But something that is fantastic about No Man's Sky is, whilst it can seem overwhelming at first, with all the choices and the things you can do, it allows you to fine-tune your entire experience. You can decide to take no damage whatsoever. You can also turn off the resource management side, so you don't need any resources to go off and have fun on different planets. Or, if you love a really challenging mode, you can turn on permadeath, meaning once you die, it's over for good. It literally has a little bit of everything, and it runs so incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch. It literally puts Pokemon Scarlet and Violet to shame. There is no loading whatsoever. The only downside of having it on the Switch right now is there's no online capabilities. So each new update brings in new expeditions, and on the Switch you can't take part in them, sadly. But either way, for the price that it's often on sale for, it is so worthwhile, and there's so many tutorials and stuff you can watch if you get really stuck. That's it for my list of my favorite RPGs at the moment. I'm sure over the next year, this list will look very different. But if you want to see some other games coming out this year, which I'm really excited for, click here. I'll see you next time. Bye.